I'm Chris Williams from Cyclone Fanatic and a proud Iowa State graduate from the class of 2007. No one shows up like Iowa State fans.
And Cyclones support Cyclones on and off the field.
Your gift can provide scholarships to students, fund groundbreaking research. We could even drum up opportunities for the marching band. Visit MoveWhatMatters.com to learn how you can make an impact today.
Morning, guys. Sorry, I was getting one last sip of my coffee. We are here.
I'll be sipping plenty.
Yeah, I'll
Cheers.
be drinking a coffee all show long here on the Beat Reporters. Cheers in the Northwest Bank Studios. I'm Jake Brend, Cyclone Fanatic, joined by Ben Hutchens of the Quad City Times and Rob Gray of the Cedar Rapids Gazette. How are we doing, gentlemen?
It's almost like staying up till 11:45 to learn an opponent has us all feeling some kind of way this morning. Guys, Cyclone Nation, I'm not too happy with that. Who could have foreseen this Las Vegas Players Era tournament being a bleep show?
Oh, man. We'll get into all of that. Full disclaimer, we are recording this episode at 8 a.m. on Wednesday, so we are not going to talk about Syracuse really at all. We're going to talk about the format and how Iowa State came to play Syracuse and all that stuff, but we're not going to talk about the actual game because we don't want to date this program. So if you're listening to this on Thanksgiving, on Black Friday, over the weekend, this should still be a pretty evergreen show for you. And we'll do that courtesy of Kelderman Manufacturing. Kelderman is quite the guy. It wouldn't shock me if he made the impulsive decision to go out to Vegas. I don't believe he's out there, though. I know Aiden had quite the time with Kelderman in Vegas last year, and he's got to be on my top 10 list of guys that I'd like to be in Vegas with. He's also higher than top 10 of a guy that you want to do business with in the state of Iowa. Kelderman Manufacturing, handling all of your trucking, all of your signage, all of your manufacturing needs under one big umbrella. You can head on over to Kelderman Manufacturing and check out his YouTube channel at Kelderman Trucks to get a behind-the-curtains look at the one, the only, the Jeff Kelderman. We got a good show in store for you today. We are going to break down the first two games of the Players Era Tournament, St. John's and Creighton takeaways. We'll share some frustrations with the Players Era format. We're going to rank each of our top 5 wins of the Otzelberger era. Is 9 wins a football success? The most important defensive player to retain? Is this the year the CyHawk Wrestling drought ends? And then we'll close with some women's basketball. Pretty loaded show, guys. The first 2 days of the Players Era Tournament were pretty fun as a fan and as a just viewer of the tournament. What were your initial thoughts on Iowa State's beatdown of Creighton and the 1-point win over St. John's?
Well, I was impressed with both. I think I was more impressed with the St. John's win, given how physical St. John's played, and that's a skilled basketball team too. I mean, Creighton's obviously going through it a little bit. You know what they lost, early on, and they're trying to find their way a little bit. But great response though with Taman Lipsey being out, and we don't know how long Taman will be out. But 2 very nice, solid wins, but not solid enough at the Players Era Festival / tournament / event.
I saw Jamboree. That might be the best way to put it. Like a AAU tournament, kind of a vibe out there in Vegas.
The PE Jam.
Yeah, there you go. Rob, I think I was more impressed with the Creighton win because we saw what Creighton did to this team without Taman Lipsey in the exhibition. And defensively for Iowa State to come out with 5 such incredible defensive possessions, 2 shot clock violations in there, I think that set such a tone. And we saw the offense, Nate Heise and Killian Torres specifically kind of combined to fill the offensive role left by Lipsey. So that was the game I came away with, I think, a little bit more impressed considering it was a rematch and Taman Lipsey was on the bench.
Yeah, I just think St. John's a better team. So that's what impressed me more. you get Blake Buchanan hitting 2 free throws when he came in 3 of 10 from the line. I mean, it felt like it was a gutsier performance, even though I totally get your point because, the exhibition, there's a subsection of fans that thought the sky was falling because the Cyclones were dominated in that game and only forced 1 first half turnover and all of that. And we saw that Iowa State would be fine. Creighton's trending in the wrong direction now. I still think they've got plenty of pieces to have a solid season, but I think an argument can be made for both, Ben. That's for sure.
Has it been long enough now that we can erase the Creighton exhibition from our memories? Because it was so difficult where even after like the Mississippi State game, when you saw the team fully healthy playing against what we thought at the time was a good team and has turned out to not exactly be a great team, it still was in the back of your head of, oh yeah, we saw this happen, but it was a scrimmage, it was an exhibition. I think what we saw on Tuesday in Vegas kind of puts all of that by the wayside, and you can just act like it never happened for the most part, because it really didn't.
Jake, I want to read a quote that Killian Torrey gave on the radio that was so insightful, and it's exactly to that point where Iowa State's kind of flushed that Creighton game. Defensively, Killian said, that first game against Creighton, that was the first time we were playing together. That's a new team. And so that wasn't us. Now, you can tell by all the games we did since the exhibition, we're different, we play harder, and we play with the identity we want to build throughout the year. So I think that's a good point, is maybe we can finally forget about that Creighton game.
Speaking of Killian Torrey, I mean, the guy impresses me more and more each game. Just when I think that, teams are going to start correcting and they're going to sag off him a little bit, they kind of did. Creighton kind of sagged off of him, and he was still able to find ways to get to the rack and finish, and he easily plays his best game as a Cyclone. The defensive, I don't even think intensity is the right word. It's a step up from defensive intensity. He's almost just glued to whoever guy he's guarding. It's super impressive what Torrey's doing right now, and I don't even know what ceiling I would put on him at this point.
Yeah, well, we got hints of it, right? When TJ talked immediately about how much he liked him and Bateman. I mean, kind of highlighted Bateman a little bit more as seemingly a more quote-unquote complete player, offensively and defensively. And Toure is kind of a defensive specialist, but man, his ability to, like you said, to slash. It seems like every game there's a steal dunk combo for him, if not more than one. I mean, that sequence in the Creighton game where he got a dunk, I think off an assist from Joshua Jefferson, who I don't think we're talking about, but I don't think we could talk about too much, I guess. And then Buchanan gets a dunk, I think also from a Jefferson assist, and then Toure gets his patented steal dunk, and then Jefferson just a three. I mean, that's special stuff there. And again, with Jefferson, since you were sharing quotes, I went off the ASAP Sports quote sheet, and with Jefferson's quote there struck me. I put it in my road recap. He said, quote, "When I'm intentional about what I do on the floor, I think I can go out there and do what I want to do every single night. So crashing the boards, trying to get on the offensive glass as much as I can is what helped me with my double-double tonight." I mean, 15th double-double, 11th as a Cyclone. I mean, he's just a double-double automatic, more or less, regardless of who they play. And, that certainly bodes well. Again, with how long is Taman going to be out, I think, as TJ has hinted, as long as he needs to be out to be fully healthy, because you don't want him, again, going through a season where he's 60 to 80%. Right, you want to get him as close to 100 again as you can get. So hopefully he's running in the 75 to 90 range, maybe probably throughout the season.
And I think we'd all agree that's probably the right approach. It's a different groin injury for what it's worth compared to the one he suffered last season, and we saw how limited he was in Kansas City and even in the NCAA tournament in Milwaukee. He was clearly not the same player. So I think you got to rest him and sit him out for as long as it takes to get him back healthy. The play for J. Jeff I want to mention, because you're right, Rob. We could really highlight him throughout the entire Vegas matchup. Such an impressive homecoming for Joshua. Is the 2 free throws he made at the end of the St. John's game for Taman Lipsey to get hurt and give up an open 3, not of his own doing. He physically couldn't get back. I mean, that 3-pointer gave St. John's the lead. You think, man, that is a killer critical bucket, so big on momentum. What in the world is Iowa State going to do without Taman Lipsey, who was kind of the offensive leader that game? Milan goes down the floor, somehow gets a running hook shot jumper. I don't know how you guys described it. I was challenged trying to describe how that shot looked.
I would call it more of a pitch. He did like a pitching. He was like Nolan Ryan, and he just threw it at the rim, and it somehow went in.
He said on the broadcast, I put it behind my head, and I'd never made that shot before. But he gets it to go. That was so big. And then Jefferson comes down the floor, gets fouled, gets to the free throw line, and knocks them both down. Rob, I think you used the word gritty or gutsy. Gosh, that was that moment for me where this team got down, and it was able to claw its way back and get that defensive stop.
Friend of the program, Eugene Rapay, asked Jefferson after the game if he's always practiced like a guard or always tried to play like a guard, and he referenced how his AAU coach didn't treat bigs like bigs. All the bigs trained like guards. And I think you're really seeing that come out this year. Last year, we really saw Jefferson take that point forward role, especially late in the year when Keyshawn was in and out of the lineup, when Taman was battling some injuries, playing with a broken thumb. Yeah, Curtis got sick and missed a couple games. And Jefferson, by all accounts, did really well in that spot, but he still struggled with turnovers at points. He had 7 turnovers in that game at Oklahoma State. He really would struggle sometimes getting his pocket picked by big guards or by smaller guards, and it was kind of a necessary evil that you were going to take. To me, I think that's been, aside from like his body improving and getting stronger and quicker and faster, I think his handle and his overall control of the game has even elevated more than it was last year. And that's, I think, a really good sign for Iowa State going forward, because once you've got Lipsey back, that's 3 primary ball handlers right there that you trust with the game.
Yeah, I thought St. John's press gave Iowa State's ball handlers some problems. What did you guys think about that? That was maybe a little bit of a concern coming out of Vegas, or an area that you look at as something Iowa State needs to address.
Absolutely.
Well, it's something that teams are going to clearly try to imitate. That was definitely an issue. I mean, they were slightly down in points off turnovers much of that game, in large part because of that press. And obviously St. John's, again, very skilled team. They didn't turn it over a ton. Iowa State got, I think, 7 turnovers in the second half. I had predicted 8 on social media, so I was a little bit off there. But yeah, that's definitely something. And one last thing on Jefferson, when I did a big feature on him last year, coming from a football family, offensive lineman family, and he bucked that trend because of I think he was at a 7th grade practice, and he was like, this is terrible in the Vegas heat. He's just like, Dad, I'm not playing. I'm done. He referenced, I think it's Deaton Thomas, the former UNLV star, who is his AAU coach, really helping him with everything. And, to go along with what Eugene talked to him about after that game. And yeah, you saw that last year, but to your point, Jake, also, yeah, you got to clean it up a little bit in that area. If you're going to be a point forward, you're going to get a lot of guards strafing at you down lower than you can get. And I think the fact that he's healthier too, I mean, came in with a knee injury, obviously, before last season, dealt with a few things this offseason, but, in addition to being bigger, stronger, faster, healthier, I think really helps in that regard as well.
2-0 Iowa State to start off the Players Era tournament, and they get rewarded with an 0-2 Syracuse at noon. We'll just leave it there. What have you guys thought, big picture-wise, about not the inaugural Players Era Festival, but the first ever 18-team Players Era Festival?
Well, I'll just say, first off, what an incredible field, and there have been some incredible games. you know, Michigan, beating its first two opponents by a combined 70 points.
Oh, man.
I mean, that team is a problem. Houston barely getting by Syracuse in overtime and then getting beat. That's an eye-opener. Kansas, arguably an easier path than Iowa State, clips them by 2 in the point differential. You look at that second tip in on the missed 3 for St. John's, and Creighton hitting a number of threes when Iowa State really could have pulled away even bigger in that second game. But I mean, just a very high quality basketball. I will say that, and also I will say, for the most part, I've really liked the TNT quote unquote family of networks coverage of it too. I like the people doing it. From the studio to the play-by-play and the commentary, color commentary, I think it's been top notch. So great event in terms of the games. I think an event that could perhaps benefit from a better format, or certainly a format that is more easily understandable and makes more sense to fans. But can't argue with the quality of basketball. It's been outstanding.
To beat the dead horse, guys, I'd like to officially nominate Dylan Mitchell's layup at the end of the St. John's game as the most, inconsequential basket of all time. Because as Iowa State fans, guys, I know some of you sickos out here listening to the beat reporters on your Thanksgiving. You had the Cyclones on the spread, and I know that basket changed the 2.5 point spread. It changed the 21 point differential to a 19 point differential, and potentially left the Jayhawks the Cyclones out of the third place money game. So Scott Van Pelt, you've got to feature that one this week on your show. And yeah, I think you guys hit on all the points of this Players Era tournament. I think it's great that the Big 12 has a partnership here. Top 8 teams, it sounds like, are going to get into this. So I wrote in one of my takeaways on the Quad City Times, Iowa State fans should get used to this. And it's an area that TJ knows well. Clearly Jay Jeff knows well. I don't think he'll be back, but it's an area that the Cyclones can clearly play well in. The field is fantastic, and good for the Big 12 to be affiliated with this event. This was one I wanted to watch more than the Maui Invitational, more than the Acusure thing that Iowa and Ole Miss were playing in, guys. This was absolutely the premier Feast Week event.
I agree with all of your points. And I think I would have said this even before Iowa State maybe got the short end of the stick. There does feel like there's a little something missing. And I don't know, is there a ballroom they can go play in Vegas? Or is there a smaller arena that they could condense into? Just because it does feel... It feels a little too modern for my liking, if that makes sense. And it feels like it's the NBA Cup, and you've got 15 sponsors, and let's give a shout out to Farm Story Meats. No, I'm kidding. We've only got 2 sponsors for you guys on this program, but you've got like 15, 20 sponsors spread all over the court. I would like them to find a way to make this feel more like a midseason tournament. But again, that once the ball's tipped, and once you've got Houston playing Tennessee in an Elite 8 rematch, once you've got Iowa State playing St. John's, all that goes out the window. But I would like to see this tournament maybe improve over the years. And, of course, the format, they've got to figure it out. You cannot do this. I don't know if it's switching to point differential versus the spread, if it's finding a KenPom metric to adjust for strength of schedule. But Kansas should not get rewarded for playing Notre Dame over Iowa State playing St. John's. It doesn't make a ton of sense. And I've seen a lot of Kansas fans on Twitter who Iowa State and Kansas maybe have the most respectful rivalry of any fan base that I've ever come across. But I've seen a lot of Kansas fans like almost feeling guilty and coming to Iowa State's defense on how things played out. So I'd like to think if things went the other way and Iowa State were to play just Creighton and Notre Dame or Rutgers, that they'd kind of feel the same way, because it just feels a little cheap that Iowa State gets to go 2-0 and they don't get rewarded with really anything.
Yeah,
except for in March. These games, It hurts now, but they're going to matter in March.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when one of the big appeals of the whole event is the NIL element, and then one team that goes undefeated gets nothing extra. They're treated as an 0-3 team. That's a problem. I mean, that's objectively a problem, I would say.
Yeah, to me, Syracuse is a very fringe quad one team. They could certainly fall out of that. I guess what I would have thought is that Iowa State would be getting another, like the highest level one-on-one opponent or something like that in Alabama, in Auburn, a team that's almost certain to finish in a quad one. Because if Syracuse ends quad two, this is an absolute lose-lose scenario because you're expected to win it, and if you don't, it really hurts your resume. But we won't talk too much about Syracuse anymore because we don't. You could be listening to this, and Iowa State could have won by 20 for all we know. But there's some interesting elements to that game. Let's give a shout-out to our friends at Farm Story Meats. Made a joke earlier, but we deeply appreciate their support of what we do here at Cyclone Fanatic on the Beat Reporters. If you're listening now, it's probably too late to get a meat bundle for Thanksgiving, but it would be the perfect time to start planning out Christmas and what you're going to do around the holidays. So give our friends at farmstorymeats.com a shout. They've got so many meat bundles. The tailgate bundle, if you are heading down to the bowl game or if you're heading down to Stillwater. They've got so much Iowa-raised, locally owned meat, from chicken to pork to cows to everything, and it's all farm-raised, pasture-raised right here in Iowa. So give a great local business your support with Farm Story Meats. And we'd also encourage you around this holiday season to head to CycloneFanaticShop.com. We got some Black Friday deals going on right now, and we have so much merch, really from... If you go onto the website, there's so many different tabs from our basic stuff right there. The Cyclones versus the World, our top seller over the years, to just a basketball category, a football category, a wrestling category, our players category. You can go and find all of that. $10 off select hoodies right now on CycloneFanaticShop.com. That ends December 1st, so go and do all your Black Friday, Cyber Monday shopping at the Cyclone Fanatic Shop. And then rep the Cyclones and rep your, hopefully, your favorite Cyclone media company. So we appreciate the support right there. Ben Hutchens, finalist for Iowa Sports Writer of the Year. Congratulations, man. Came up with this really good idea after TJ Otzelberger's 100th win at Iowa State. If we went around and ranked our top 5 wins. So, Ben, it was your idea. How about you start us off?
Love it. Okay. I had to rely on some of my Iowa State student friends that I've encountered up here because I wasn't here for a lot of these top 5 wins of the TJ Otzelberger era, which was kind of my main takeaway, is last year felt like such a successful season, maybe at times the most successful season in the Otzelberger era as Iowa State reached number 2, but kind of those memorable, key, best wins weren't there. My only nomination from the 2025 season that my friend Garrett reminded me of was that win at Texas Tech, where Joshua Jefferson, I think, had the layup to force overtime, if memory serves correctly, and Iowa State had a big comeback, that one early in Big 12 play. We look back at that one as an incredible win for Iowa State, but I don't think that's in the same tier as the win in the Big 12 championship against Houston. Blowout, maybe that's the number one. The win versus Wisconsin in the NCAA tournament has to be up there, considering what Iowa State came from the year before. You look at that win versus UNC, guys. I've heard it described as the Caleb Grill game.
Yep.
You know,
fire up the grill.
Win versus Texas in 2023. So I don't know, that's not ranked in order. I really wanted to hear what your guys' perspective is as somebody who's seen a lot of these. But yeah, my main takeaway was I'm surprised there weren't more of these last year. You think of that BYU game, maybe would have absolutely been one had Iowa State been on the right side of that 1-point loss in double overtime. So I can't wait to see what you boys have to say.
I absolutely had that thought last night, Ben, as I was ranking these, was that 24-25 team is going to go down as such a what if, and it's mostly because of injury and mostly because of what happened there. But at the same time, it did feel hollow, where that Texas Tech win aged incredibly well. But I think Aiden and I were talking about this on the postgame show yesterday, that win at the time wasn't anything spectacular. It was a really good win. Anytime you can win on the road against a team like Texas Tech, it's a really good win, but they weren't aging to be a 2 or a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament yet. So I didn't have any on my list from the 2025 season. I started with number 5. Let's go with, I got my list right here. I went with the win over Washington State in the round of 32 in 2023. I thought this was a quintessential TJ Otzelberger win. Couldn't make a shot for the first 12 minutes and only hung around because of their defense. And then it was just a really fun second half as Taman Lipsey, Milan Momcilovic, and Curtis Jones got it going. And just a memorable win when it was in a cyclone-heavy atmosphere. TJ was really emotional after the game, pumping his fist. Number 4, I went the 2022 Texas game with the Tyrese Hunter return. Probably the best singular atmosphere that I've witnessed at Hilton Coliseum in the Otzelberger era. Probably crossed a line a little bit, but it was hostile to say the absolute least. Number 3, I went with the CyHawk game in 2021. This was the first time where it really felt like Otzelberger is the guy for this program. Not that the wins over Xavier and Memphis before that didn't show that, but Iowa State was in a drought in the CyHawk game. They had gotten their teeth stomped in by Luka Garza for a few years in a row, and Otzelberger returned the favor and blew Iowa State out. He was in tears in the post-game press conference talking about being home. I think that was just a really special win for everyone that was in attendance. I went with that Big 12 championship game at number 2. You beat the number 1 team in the country by 30 points to win another Big 12 tournament championship. That was super impressive. And then I went with the win over Wisconsin to reach the Sweet 16 in TJ's first year. Not the most impressive win when you just look at it on the surface, but when you consider the makeup of that Iowa State team, the only way they could go out there and win was if you turned it into a UFC brawl. And there is no more Otzelberger win than that first year when, Iowa State, you could argue, ruined Johnny Davis's career. The way they guarded him so hard, and he has not been the same since in the G League, overseas, if that's where he is now. Iowa State punched Wisconsin in the mouth 150 times and got punched 149 times and made it out to make a Sweet 16 after winning 2 games the year before.
Well, I have a fairly offbeat list because I figured I needed to throw some wild cards in there. But the one in common I do have is the Wisconsin game. Gabe Kalsher, God bless Gabe Kalsher. The defense was incredible. The shots could be a swish from the corner on one possession, shooting it behind the backboard from the corner on the next possession. But I think he had 22 in that game. Obviously, Tyrese Hunter was hugely important to winning those 2 tournament games. And all of the games you mentioned are great. One I want to highlight just because of atmosphere was the top 10 matchup with Kansas in January of last season.
Yeah,
and just
great atmosphere.
utterly destroying Kansas. And Bill Self just looked like a beaten man when he came in to talk about the game, just like he was lost with that team. And look at how that team ended up. That was really kind of a lost season for the Jayhawks, but they certainly had a lot of great pieces. But I went with some losses too. Both BYU games last season. Incredible basketball games. The overtime game at Hilton, atmosphere, unbelievable. And then the Curtis Jones performance in the Big 12 tournament. 31 points, I believe. Curtis went on heaters a bunch of times, but he was like, we're not going to get blown out by this team, and Curtis Jones was a big reason why, because they didn't have many answers for BYU's offense. And this is going to sound really weird, but I think it was a I want to say seminal sort of game. Dreary bye game, year 1 of Otzelberger, Jackson State comes to town. The Cyclones eke out a 47-37 win over the SWAC All-Stars.
I remember
Jazz Kuntz
that all
goes
too
3
well.
for 3 from 3. They could have very well lost to Jackson State. They could not get anything going, but they did it. And then, they went on to that historic. I think it was the 10th win, which made TJ the first Iowa State coach in program history to win 10 straight as a head coach. And it was it epitomized what that team had to do to be successful. Somehow find a way. And, they shot better from 3 that game than they probably did in almost any other game, even while scoring only 47 points. I just feel like some games just had to be emblematic of the Otzelberger era, and I felt like that one was one, especially early. And one I'll throw in there, too, is going to Baylor, winning 73-58 with that second team that gets...
I forgot about that one. I should have done that.
That gets forgotten because that team just flamed out and had the horrible game against Pitt in the first round of the NCAA tournament. That was an intriguing team. Jaron Holmes had a big game that day. Almost had a mini Joshua Jefferson type day. I think he had a line of like 16, 7, 5. But that was, a blowout of a really good Baylor team on the road. And they needed that game. And then they beat Baylor in the Big 12 tournament. And I kind of throw the Houston one for the Big 12 tournament title a bit to the side because Jamal Shed, Houston was a shell of itself. It was almost like Sampson more or less said, yeah, we weren't going to win that game, so we didn't even really try, Yeah. But they did. They tried their best in the first half, I think. But once it became clear that they just didn't have the firepower to keep in that game, they were just like, we're going to protect everybody and do this and that. But still a great atmosphere, and obviously huge to win that tournament, which Iowa State has become adept at.
Ben, do you want the lore of that Baylor win? Do you know anything about it?
I want the lore of that Baylor win and that Jackson State win. That sounds incredible.
I think Rob already kind of shared all there is about that
Not
Jackson
a whole lot
State
to add
game.
to that beauty.
But so the Baylor game, it was the first game after Caleb Grill was kicked off the team. So it was this Iowa State team. They were supposed to allegedly have AJ Green. They were supposed to have Jeremiah Williams. Both those guys go down. So Taman Lipsey's your starting point guard. And I think that team completely maxed out their ceiling. In January, they had 3 straight weeks where they beat top 10 teams at Hilton Coliseum in Texas, Kansas, K-State. And then they flamed out in February. Grill gets kicked off the team. It's looking like they might be on the bubble at that point. They go out to Baylor, who I believe was top 10 at the time. And Otzelberger said, nobody's earned playing time. Literally everybody's getting in the game, and that's how we're going to do this. If you want to play, you've got to bring more energy than Conrad or Eli Green. And sure enough, 5 minutes into the game, Otzelberger throws Conrad Hawley in the game, throws Eli Green in the game. Everybody goes in the game, and Iowa State plays easily their most energetic game of the season and upsets Baylor on the road. So that's a fantastic choice, Rob.
Yeah, Baylor was number 7, and
7.
Holmes did have 16, 7, and 5. Conrad played a grand total of 1 minute, but that's one element I kind of forgot. It was like everyone's going to play. And TJ, true to his word, like
Everyone.
you said, threw Conrad out there, Eli King.
Eli King, not Eli Green.
But yeah, Trey King had a nice game. Baylor number 7 at the time. Absolutely needed that game. But yeah,
That was also the year. They had that tournament out in Portland where they did beat North Carolina, like you mentioned, Ben, and they beat Villanova. And neither of those wins turned out to be as big as they seemed at the time. But yeah, that was a unique team. I don't think an Otzelberger team has had higher highs or lower lows. Or sorry, not higher high. As many highs and lows as that team had, because when Caleb Grill was hitting shots, or when Kalsher, it was kind of if Holmes, Kalsher, or Grill go for 25, they're not going to lose to anybody. But there's going to be some nights where none of those guys can go for more than 10, and it was
Like Pitt.
it was ugly. Yeah.
One honorable mention loss I should throw in before we move on is that Auburn game last year in Maui. Even with the result, that might be the best game I've seen Iowa State play last season. When you think about, at that point, Iowa State and Auburn were clearly the two best teams in the country. I mean, hands down, with Janai Broom and Chad Baker-Mazara, and how that game went down to the final seconds. That was maybe one of the most impressive games I've seen Iowa State coach, and you can't do anything more than just shake your head at the result.
That one in the Arizona
Good
game.
point.
Dude, yeah.
That
Iowa
would've
State
been,
had that game won.
that would have been on the list if Iowa State had, if Caleb Love had not existed.
A top 5 heartbreaking losses would have to be a great segment.
maybe
sometime on the
next
Beat
week.
Reporters. Yeah.
We'll have to wait for a heartbreaking loss, and then we'll do the top 5 heartbreaks. All right, well, great segment idea right there, Ben. Let's move on to some football. Matt Campbell talked a lot about, I guess, expectations and legacy of the team. Rob, you asked the first question. What did Campbell tell you, and I guess what were your expectations of his answer?
Well, I mean, he more or less recapped the things that he's talked about. Well, but one thing that he always talks about is you don't tell a team's story until the season's over. And you can talk about 5 straight wins on the heels of 11-win season, something no Iowa State teams come close to doing. 9 was the ceiling before that. And you can talk about 4 straight losses where you go, man, we should have at least had 2 of those from an Iowa State perspective. But the injuries, kind of chronicled just everything. And I was just hearkening back to how we just managed to throw in, after the Kansas win, hey, by the way, we've got a chance to do something that only 4 other teams have done before here, which is win as many as 9 games. So it struck me that as much as he's going to emphasize process over result, because, and with all due respect to Brady Quinn, who I remember going on social media, said, hey, why do you advertise you don't care about winning games? Process leads to results, and you live with whatever results you get based on what you did leading into them, is the idea. And it's not just Matt Campbell. Obviously, a lot of pro teams do that. You hear it from everyone. So I just think Campbell is always, not always with a couple games left in the season, going to give you that broader perspective. But I think he really did that in that answer. And again, when you think about some of the guys who are playing now, and, we talked to 3 backups on Tuesday, and all those guys have been thrust into big roles. It still has the potential to be a very special season. I think that's what he's emphasizing, and one of those 9-win seasons came in the early 1900s. So, I mean, modern era, Coach Campbell could have 3 of the 4 to go with McCarney's 9-win season in 2000. So, I mean, you never know what you're going to get with Matt. You're going to get the opponent's really good no matter what their record is, which we got. But he's very good now, 10 seasons in, of just highlighting, A, how tough it is to win at Iowa State, and B, how making history matters to them.
Those Oklahoma State Cowboys, man.
2 one-score losses in a row, man.
Yeah, they're playing better. They got a new coach. Guys, vibes are going to be up in Stillwater. We'll see. I just echo. I thought, Rob, that was such a good question. You got a good answer. Why was Campbell, he came up with this thing of, hey, we could be the first team in Iowa State history to win 9 games in back-to-back seasons. And I was looking for what is this team's motivation. And the players play for the guys beside them. The players play for, tape in the NFL, and mostly for the guys beside them because they're football players. Benjamin Bramer played after he got, the Arizona State game because he's a football player. And then I think fans and all of us in the media, on the beat reporters, we look for kind of the historical perspective and those other perspectives for why these last 2 games matter. And at the end of the day, it will be, I think, an impressive season if Iowa State's able to reach 9 wins. No, it won't be a successful season because the standard changed after the 5-0 start, but it could be a historic season.
Yeah, I think perspective is really important, and the way these seasons are remembered, you forget how 8 of the games went down usually. Like you look back in a decade and like, what happened in that Arizona State game again? Oh gosh, that was the Jeff Sims game. Oh.
Yep.
Or you'll look back at the win over Kansas, like what was so special about that game again? Oh, that's when Rocco figured it out again. And the more time passes, the more it is just, oh yeah, that was the 9-4 team that won the Rate Bowl, or that was the 7-5 team that lost to Memphis in the stupid Liberty Bowl, and it was freezing cold out. And I think it is good to add perspective the way that Campbell has. And I agree, that was a really good question, Rob.
Thank you.
When it comes to the defense, just in this era of college football, player retention is always going to be a storyline because anybody can leave at any given moment. Iowa State's going to have some players on both sides of the ball that are valued by other teams. I want to stick to defense. If obviously Dom Orange is out of the question because he's going to the NFL. Of the returners on the defense, who do you guys think would be the most important player for Iowa State to retain if you just had to choose one?
I had the thought watching Saturday's game, is Marcus Neal the most valuable Cyclone? Is that the guy at the top of the list to retain? And I'd raise it even further. He's the top of the retention list for the defense, and he might be second behind the quarterback overall on this team. When you think about how valuable he is, the eye test was popping off, and I researched the stats right before the show, guys, and he's at the top of the team in tackles. He's at the top of the league in interception, or top of the team. He has 2 interceptions. Like, this guy has been so valuable. I asked John Haycock about it yesterday, as he just explained Marcus Neal is kind of the only veteran guy left, and he's only a sophomore, but that makes him a veteran on this secondary. And when you think about, okay, it's also going to be really important to see if Jeremiah Cooper and Jontez Williams want to come back, if they gauge NFL interest. Maybe you have those 3 guys at the same tier, but how could you not give Marcus Neal right now the most priority in terms of people you want to retain? And I'd say he's the second most important player right now on this team, considering that Dominic Orange will be headed to the NFL.
Yeah, I'd put him on the same tier with Cooper and Williams. So I think, Campbell made a point of saying that, they will be back. I mean, they can be back is probably more or less, it's probably the better thought at this point, because again, especially when you consider the injuries Cooper's gone through over his career and all that, and what a toll it took on a really talented guy like Malik Verdon, who got his cup of coffee. But all that said, I would throw in. I mean, if you're going to talk team wide, I think Ben Bramer is certainly right there, given what he means to the offense. And I guess Carson Hansen probably too. But I mean. But from a defensive perspective, like you said, Ben, and you had a really good question just about how violent he plays, and he is. And it's so funny when he comes and talks to us. He's got this huge smile on his face, and he's
the shark,
soft-spoken guy, just like, hey, yeah, sure. And like I always said when I covered hockey, who were the nicest guys on the team? They're the quote unquote goons. They're the guys who are supposed to mix it up the most, and you see him get in the fights and do this and that and this and that. And not that Neal's getting in fights, but I mean, just the toughness he plays with. And, just soft-spoken otherwise, but it flips a switch. I think it's what did Rocco say? That's what Carson Hansen's like with this personality. And we see that when we talk to him, and then watch how violently he plays as well. But, yeah, you're right, Ben, though, just a keystone of that defense. And if he's not playing at the level he's playing at, they're really in trouble on that side of the ball, and instead I think they're gelling at the right time. And I was kind of stunned, but not that stunned to see that that game and the Arizona game, giving up 14 points, was the lowest point output since giving up 10 to Cincinnati in 2023. So, I mean, it's a defense that's last couple of years kept the team in contention to win, right? But not been the type of lockdown defense it was even in that lost 2022 season because the offense couldn't score, or, you know, some of the other seasons that Haycock's had great defenses. But really good point, though, about Neal. I mean, just a huge player for the team.
I've got a bit of an off-the-cuff question. So you guys mentioned a lot of players. Didn't mention Kyle Conrarty. So I'm just going to go down the list, and you're going to tell me when to stop, where you would put Conrarty on the player retention list. So we'll obviously go Rocco. Nobody stopping me? Nobody? Okay. Rocco, Marcus Neal, Jontez, Ben Bramer, Jeremiah Cooper, Carson Hansen, Cooper Ebel.
Stop.
So before Ebel?
Right in the same realm.
Right in the same tier.
Only because I believe Iowa State could, I mean, if for whatever reason Kyle were to choose to go somewhere else.
Which I'm not speculating.
Yes. And
for those listening.
It's just an absolute, yes, this is an absolute hypothetical, right? But he's, in a matter of saying that he's hugely important to the team. And he's shown that. I mean, when he came back, boy, what a night and day difference to have him kicking field goals. And it's not to take away from Jay Smith, you know, but just where Conrarty's at is a whole other, you know, he's in another atmosphere in terms of his leg and the big kicks he's made. But Iowa State, the caveat is Iowa State has in the past gone out and gotten a guy like Andrew Mevis from, I think, FCS, and he was fantastic. It's still to this day the only time they went to K-State and won, and I'm walking into the interview room and I just hear this chant, Mevis, and the players, the locker room was not far away, and the players were chanting the kicker's name. The only time I've ever heard it happen, although they probably were chanting it when Kyle won the 2 Iowa games with the 54-yard field goals. But so there's always that option. But to have Conrarty, a guy, you know, the 63-yarder, the 2 winners over Iowa, just nails in the moment. It's a good point, and again, very much a hypothetical in terms of the idea of him not being there. But hugely important to the team as well. It's really hard to peg where he'd be because as a specialist, you have a big impact, but you don't have the every down impact of guys, you know, on the defense and the offense.
The only thing I'll add to Jake's fantastic hypothetical exercise is you got to get him on scholarship before you get him on the NIL retention list.
Yep. Aiden Flora too. We'll see where Flora ranks on that list. Well, good basketball, good football discussion. Let's close with a little bit of wrestling and some women's basketball. Massive CyHawk duel this Sunday, noon on ESPN. Rob, you were at availability on Tuesday. Is this the year the drought ends?
Well, it could be. I mean, there's some toss-up matches. There's some really intriguing matches. A lot of highly ranked guys on both sides. And one thing to watch with Iowa State is at 149 with Jacob Frost and Panero Johnson, two guys who are easily could reach the podium and have in NCAA, and Panero, 2-time Big 12 champ. Dresser said to my question about that battle that he was going to give out the scoop that Jacob Frost had won some wrestle-offs recently, and he's kind of earned that spot. Now, he did also say that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to put him out there against Iowa, because, you know, Pinero's that good too. You know what I mean? And he said Panero, he was kind of surprised that Panero lost those wrestle-offs given how his track record and what has happened. So that'll be something to watch throughout the season. But they've certainly got a shot, and they've been close the last couple times. So I asked Dresser, I brought up that Dresser was a high school coach in Virginia the last time Iowa State won the duel. He was a Hawk through and through, competed for Iowa, All-American, all that stuff, multi-time. And he was just kind of like, wow, you know, that's kind of wild, because I think he was poised to become the Virginia Tech coach but he's coaching at Christiansburg High School. And then I asked Anthony Echemendia, Cuban, where he was, and he was about 5 years old, and he said he was probably climbing trees. And, they lived in a town where everyone worked at the prison. And it was a pretty hard life, but he was able to run around. He said he was a gymnast at the time. So, I mean, this gives a little perspective of how long it's been, the 20 dual meet drought for Iowa State. But they're as poised to do it in any, and they've got a bunch of new transfers in that are hungry to compete on that type of stage, ESPN. So it should be an electric environment. And certainly Iowa State's got as good a chance as they have in the last couple decades to get it done against the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, as always, the officiating becomes a big. It just kind of depends on sometimes the type of officials. I watched the entire Iowa-Ohio State duel in that brand new tournament a couple weeks ago, and those officials were aggressive, and they were calling stalling on Iowa quite a bit. So we all know how this rivalry goes, and sometimes it comes down to that. Well, we'll have the coverage for you at Cyclone Fanatic on Sunday. It'll be a big day. I'll never predict it to happen until I see it. That's kind of the mode I'm in. I bet it goes 5-5 down the middle, and Iowa wins on bonus points if I had to guess, because that seems to be how it goes until it goes the other way. A little bit of women's basketball. The Cyclones play down in Florida in a little 4-team tournament. They'll get Marquette on Friday, and then either Indiana or Gonzaga the following day. Realistic expectations for Iowa State down there? Is it just to win the tournament? Is it to pick up some beauty points? What is it?
I think so. I mean, yeah, you'd like to see them win. They're a top 15 team in the nation right now. And I think this tournament is important because there's no UConn, there's no South Carolina on the schedule that's really going to push up their strength of schedule at the end of the season. So I think I'm really excited to see how this team looks in these two games against power opponents. I want to see how Kinsey Hare looks against her old team, Marquette.
Yep,
those are kind of going to be the storylines I'm looking for in Fort Myers, I believe.
Yeah, I think Iowa State should. I think they should dominate Marquette. I think that should be the goal. Good program, Marquette, no question, but Iowa State should dominate. And I think actually they've crept into the top 10 now just recently. But again, who have they played? I mean, and unfortunately for them, Indiana's not what it has been, but still a very, very good team. Gonzaga's not what it has been. But things can change, like we were talking about on the men's side, right? I mean, Mississippi State still could end up being a fine team, even though they've had some struggles recently. Syracuse could, we don't know. Auburn could fall off the deep end after that 30-point, whatever. But I think definitely winning the tournament, and I think they're poised to do it. Because you got Iowa around the corner. That's going to be a big one. I think the Hawks are better than I think some people thought. And we haven't talked about the men. I mean, they're certainly better than I thought. So the games are going to ratchet up quickly, and this is a big jump for them. And again, dominate to start, and maybe dominate in game 2 too. I think that should be the expectation for them.
Yeah, I agree. It's their time. They had the weird year last year where they didn't really have a ton of marquee wins. The time is now to go and do it. So we'll all have our respective coverage: Cyclone Fanatic, the Quad City Times, the Cedar Rapids Gazette. And be sure to check out Rob and Ben's work, and it'll be a big week of Feast Week. It's up there with the best of them. So this has been the Beat Reporters here in the Northwest Bank Studios. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Kelderman Manufacturing for bringing us this show every single week. We'll be back same time next week for the Beat Reporters here in the Northwest Bank Studios.